Hello and welcome to the Business Today show. I'm Udayan Mukherjee. I've got a special guest for you on the show today, one of the great entrepreneurs of India who turned a family business or broke away from a family business to create what is one of the most enduring FMCG brands the country has seen over the last few decades. The one and only Harsh Mariwala, chairman of Marico, is with me today. Harsh, it's great to see you on the show and wonderful to catch up after such a long time.
Thank you, Uday, and great talking to you after a long time, but always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. And the first question I want to ask you is, there's so much to talk about with you, but on reflection, how do you assess your own career in the last 4 decades and how it's panned out? I mean, if you were told as a young man that this is how it will pan out, would you say that on reflection you would say, I would take it, the lot that I've had, what I've created over the last few decades?
In short, the answer is yes, but let me delve a little deeper in terms of what I had expected of myself and how it has turned out. So, first of all, when I was in college, I'm just a graduate. I have not done anything beyond my BCom, Bachelor of Commerce, and I was forced to join into the family business. I was absolutely clear that I was not going to work for anybody else, and I had to run my own business. So, from that point of view, full marks. I never worked for anybody else. And I joined the family business at a very young age of 20, and I built this business of consumer products virtually from a scratch. So I think that was my first experience in building a business, and it has been very rich because I had to learn everything from the bottom. It was a completely family managed organization. There were no professionals, so nobody to teach me. We were not in consumer products. So I had to start virtually from the bottom. I had to travel into rural areas, appoint distributors, stay with distributors in small towns where there were no hotels. When we appointed an ad agency, the first thing I said, I want to spend 1 week with you in terms of how advertising is created. So I think that experience of learning everything from the bottom has really helped me in terms of understanding how things work at the bottom. And from then on, the business grew, and a lot of issues to do with the family, large family, my father, 3 of my uncles, and then followed by 5 of my cousins in the same company, made it very complex. So how do you untangle yourself in a large family was a big challenge for me, which I took 2 to 3 years. I had to show a lot of patience, but ultimately that also worked out, and that led to formation of Marico in the year 1990, which gave me a fantastic opportunity to build a culture of FMCG company, recruit the right talent, and then over a period of time scale the business. So all in all, I made many mistakes, but it's been very rewarding. I wish I could have, somebody could have taught me how not to make some of the mistakes, but net I don't have any regrets. I think overall I'm feeling good that I was able to start from a scratch and build a company of good repute, and then ultimately pass it on to a professional. So the company has turned from a owner managed company to a strategic investor driven company.
No, you should not have any regrets, Harsh. And I've been reading all of what you said in this wonderful book, Harsh Realities, which I spent the weekend reading, and it's such a wonderfully written book. My compliments to you. But you in that book too, you mentioned this fact that you tried to get into business schools, but you failed to get admission out there. And in the book, you say that it's a blessing in disguise that you did not get in. Why do you say that?
You're absolutely right. I tried getting into a business school in India. I wanted to go abroad, but my father said no, and my father was wise enough not to allow me to go abroad, because I would have come back and joined the family business and I would have been very frustrated, because it was a typically family managed business. There were no systems, there were no professionals. So the fact that I had to learn everything from the bottom, I think that really helped me. And if I had come back after doing my MBA, I would have been much more frustrated and not gone through the learning curve which I did because I was not educated in terms of postgraduate MBA qualification. So I think it's worked out well in my favor. I don't know why my father said no. Maybe he thought I'll never come back. Maybe he thought I'll get married to somebody else and stay there. I don't have any idea, but those days we were far more obedient as kids, and I couldn't say no to my father. Then, I mean, if you ask me today, my children, if I say no, they will just rebel and do things which they want to do it on their own. But those days it was very different.
Yet, when you went about setting up the company from scratch, Marico, the company that you immersed yourself in, you actually sought out people with exactly that pedigree, all those IIT, IIM graduates, and you recount all of that in your book one by one. All of them came from the best business schools and they had very good pedigree in terms of the companies they worked for. So what you did not have yourself, but you sought out in the kind of people that you populated your company with. Why?
So you're absolutely right, because when I started learning things by referring to some of my friends, talking to some consultants, highly, shall I say, qualified individuals who worked in very good organizations, and that experience of interacting with thought leaders, with very good quality professionals really influenced me a lot in my formative years. So I was absolutely clear that if I had to run an FMCG business, I have to have the best quality talent, best quality in terms of qualifications, attitude, and also overall performance. So I think that belief I developed over a period of few years in my formative years in terms of investing in talent, and I think that has played a very, very important role in the success of Marico. And I always looked at individuals who were better than me because I was not a functional expert, and I had to recruit the best quality marketing professional, I had to recruit the best quality sales professional, and if they've already worked in this sector, then I mean they will bring their experience and they'll be able to add value. And I think many entrepreneurs think that they know it all, and that has been the biggest, I would say, mistake they make. They don't try to recruit somebody who's better than me themselves. And I had a different viewpoint, that I have to recruit better than what I am in that particular functional area, and that person should be better than me so that I am able to empower that individual and also delegate to them. I'm not abdicating my responsibility. I'm equally responsible for delegating, but it's easy to empower them because they are far more capable than yourself.
There's an interesting anecdote in your book as well, where Uday Kotak, one of your contemporaries, goes on to say that there are two kinds of companies as he sees it. One is the king and his subjects, family company with the boss thinks he knows everything, and the other is a value driven company where basically all decisions are taken keeping the firm's interests in mind, regardless of what the owner thinks. And he puts Marico in the second category, obviously. But when you look at the ecosystem today, candidly, Harsh, do you see more in the first category or the second category, all these large companies, king and his subjects or value driven?
So I would say if they are family managed in terms of the leadership, I think they are more in the first category. The biggest problem I find amongst entrepreneurs in India is that they think the company belongs to them. If you're running a company which is a public limited company, you may be the majority shareholder, you may be the promoter, you may be the founder, but that doesn't entitle you to call yourself owner, especially when you have diluted your ownership to many other shareholders. It's not right to say that this is my company. And I think that is the starting point. If entrepreneurs say that this is my company, I can't say this Marico is mine. Okay, I have a majority holding, that's fine, but it is not my company. And I think I have to be I have to realize that I have to look at all the stakeholders and even the smallest of shareholders, and I have to look at something which is in the interest of the company and not in the interest of promoters. Unfortunately, I think many promoters think that their interests come first and followed by the interest of the company, which is not right.
You've taken Marico to a certain level, Harsh, but now what is the legacy that you leave behind at Marico? Because the turf has changed quite considerably, as you will recognize yourself better than anyone, that when you were bringing the company up, your challengers you were up against the challenge of giants like Hindustan Unilever or Daburs of the world. But today, there are smaller, nimbler players like the Nykas, the Mama Earths, the Good Glam groups who are nipping away with smaller products, but they're chipping away at the edge and plugging gaps in the market. Is this a very, very different kind of an FMCG universe that Marico has to contend with today?
So let me go a little bit more into this subject. I think the overall FMCG until a few years back was known as one of the most defensive sectors, in the sense that very little of discontinuity was impacting the sector. But what has happened, what you mentioned just now about emergence of what is known as D2C brands, direct to consumer brands, is a big disruption for FMCG. Some of the entry barriers which existed earlier, entry barriers in terms of distribution, infrastructure creation. In the past, you had to distribute your products into thousands, lakhs of outlets to get a certain scale. You had to advertise on mass media like television or press, and that required big budgets. But now, in case of D2C brands, what has happened is you can do digital marketing. You need not advertising on mass media. You don't need to create a distribution network. You can sell it through e-commerce places. So those entry barriers have vanished, and on top of that, there are many funders who are wanting to fund you. Of course, you need to have a good proposition in terms of demand creation. But we have seen brands like Mamaearth and many brands which have emerged in the last few years, mainly because the entry barriers have vanished or reduced. And as far as Marico is concerned, there are two ways of looking at it, or any FMCG. One is to look at those entrants from a threat perception, that they will impact me in my core business. Another is to look at it from an opportunistic lens. So Marico, we have done the second part, which we have viewed this discontinuity from an opportunity angle, and considering that, we have acquired 3 brands which are D2C brands. The first brand we acquired was Beardo, which is in beards or beard related products. Second was Just Herbs, which is in personal care, and we've just made an application, healthy foods through True Elements. And on top of that, we also have 2 or 3 of our own D2C brands. The thing is not to have the same mindset to manage the FMCG business as you manage the D2C business. So we have put all these 3 brands plus our own brands at a different location, manned by a different team, much younger in age, and they have to work nimbly like a small outfit. And I think the key thing is, can you scale them up? So Beardo, for example, this year we expect to do 100 crore business, and over a period of next 2 years, we expect that the D2C brands of ours would, including these 3 acquisitions, would add up to about 500 crores of business.
Many of them will have some stumbling blocks, and you speak a lot in your book about failures. And how important has that been in your career, learning from the failures, because there have been many? Could you recount 1 or 2 instances where you failed and where you actually got up and managed to actually learn
I can
a lot
give you
from
many more.
That stumble?
Yeah. Unless you experiment, unless you fail, you not learn. And there are limitations to market research. No amount of market research is going to give you all the answers, and there is no shortcut to actually launching products and testing out amongst the consumers, because market research will not give you all the answers. So it's important for organizations to take that risk and study the reaction, the consumer reaction, not only to the product, but the product, the brand name, the packaging, the pricing, and so on. So having said that, many times we said that you have to do consumer insighting, you have to understand consumer, what they want, and market research has its own set of limitations, and there is no shortcut to actually launching a product, or on even on a limited scale, on a prototype basis. And I'll give you one example. About 8 or 10 years back, we identified a good opportunity to go into baked snacks under the brand name Saffola. At that time, there were no baked snacks. We were the first ones to identify that opportunity and launch a product, baked snacks, under the brand Saffola. But the biggest mistake we made was that we thought that it is under the brand name Saffola, so health is very important. So we gave a preference of health over taste. The product was average in terms of taste, but when it went to the consumer, they want a tasty snack. It's an impulsive product. If you're sitting in the afternoon with a cup of tea or a drink in the evening, you want something which is tasty and just not healthy. So the consumer rejected the product, but there was a huge learning for us in that failure, because after a few years we decided to go into Saffola oats. So we launched Saffola oats, plain oats. We got some market share, and then through consumer insighting we realized that Indians like savory breakfast and they don't like sweet breakfast. So can we do what Maggi did to noodles in terms of providing a range of savory oats? And we then profiled the taste for each and every state. We went overboard on taste. For each state, for example, in Tamil Nadu, we had a Pongal masala oats, and some other states where they require much more sweeter or a much more chili version of, or much more hotter version of oats. We designed a product, and that product has been a huge success. We have an 80% market share in that category. We ourselves have created, which is over a period of last 4 or 5 years, has become 300 crore category. But that learning from the failure of our baked snacks, prototype in Bombay market, played a huge role in going overboard on taste when we designed the product for Saffola savory oats. So there is always a silver side to any failure in terms of learning, as long as you analyze what went wrong and apply it later in your some other initiative.
I want to ask you, Harsh, about where you would place Kaya in the scheme of things, because as Marico goes, a 400 crores market cap after so many years seems to give the impression that it has not quite ended up where you envisaged it would end up. Would you concede that Kaya could have been bigger, better, smarter? Have there been any mistakes along the way there?
In short, the answer is yes. We could have done a better job. We were doing better, and then all of a sudden this pandemic came in. So last 2 years we've had a terrible time in terms of closure of our clinics. But now, come this year, from April onwards, things have bounced back, and the business has improved. It has gone back to our earlier levels, and we have a new CEO. But we have made mistakes. It's a completely different business. It's a very complex business compared to an FMCG business. It's a combination of 3 different businesses: hospitality, retail, and healthcare. And you have to find the right balance between these 3. We have made some mistakes in the past, clearly, which has put us back. But to answer your question, could it have been better? The answer is clearly yes. We should have done a much better job, accelerated by the pandemic, which had its own impact on our business, especially in the last 2 years.
Now, I want to ask you, Harsh, the other very significant thing that you've done in your career is, almost at the peak of it, you said that I'm going to relinquish the CEO's chair and give it off to a professional, which is something which is very rare in family-run or originally family-run businesses. What prompted you to do that, A? And how do you see succession at Marico from here on? Your son is engaged in the business, but is there a time that you can see that Rishabh might be the one who takes over from Saugata?
So good question. I think when I took that step in the year 2014, I had not thought that I will relinquish my responsibility at that particular point of time. At some stage I had to, but it just arose that at that time my current CEO, Saugata Gupta, he was working with me for 10 years. He expressed his desire to be in my shoes, and I discussed that with my board at that time. And we have a very active board, very participative board. And the board felt that it was good that we needed a new blood in Marico, because I had steered the company for many, many years. So the board felt that I should give him that opportunity and step down, and it will also pave the way for succession for me. I think the starting point was that my mindset was that the company does not belong to me, and the organization's interest comes first, and then my personal interest. So though I was not ready to step down, I stepped down in the interest of the company. Of course, society meant that the children, and these days it's a very hierarchical society, children would inherit me. But at that time, my son was not ready to some extent, and he was also not that keen to run an operating company. So I took that step. But looking back, it has been a very good step, because I think it has freed me in terms of doing a lot of new things which I had never thought I would be able to do if I was running the company. And I think our role as promoters has changed. Earlier it was a promoter managed company. Now it is more as a strategic investor driven company where we are the biggest investors. So I don't operate the company on day-to-day basis, but I'm aware of what's happening. I have review meetings with the management and the team. I may be spending 2-3 days a month on Marico, but day-to-day operations, nothing comes to me for decision. As far as my son is concerned, he is already running a very successful investment office, which has done exceedingly well, and he has found his calling in that particular area. So I don't think he would like to step into Marico's shoes, but if you ask me what would happen over a period of time, I think I would like to step down as chairman once, not in the immediate future, but over a period of time. And I'm grooming him to be the chairman of Marico. So he would be something like what I'm doing, but not an operational full-time role as a managing director in Marico. But he would take care of the family's interest in terms of a strategic investor.
Finally, Harsh, there's a very interesting chapter in your book called Angels and Predators. It's wonderfully phrased as well. And you talk about the time when, as a young upstart Marico, HUL got very upset and wanted to buy you, and that offer was rebuffed. Today, as your career ends, you might have another situation where these days the big predator on the block in any industry practically is Gautam Adani. And he happens to be a big competitor with Adani Wilmar for Marico. If Adani came to Marico and said, I want to buy that company, would your answer be the same?
Absolutely same. I am very clear that I have created this company from a perpetuity point of view and not to sell the company. Forget about Adani. If I want to sell it, there may be some other buyers also, and there have been many, shall I say, approaches made to me in the past, and I have always said no. So that question of selling out doesn't arise. Number two, I am preparing the company from a long-term point of view in terms of the role of board, what kind of decision the board will take over a period of time. So all the initiatives to drive perpetuity within Marico are being taken today. And if you look at the history of Procter & Gamble or Lever, I mean, they started as family-owned companies, but they have survived over a period of time. So I am viewing myself from that kind of a point of view in terms of Marico continuing in future. The fact that we have a 60% shareholding, the promoter, we are not vulnerable in terms of hostile takeover or somebody buying a stake because you have a minority stake.
Well, Harsh, we'll have to leave it there, but congratulations on a spectacular career and a terrific book as well. And you're a great inspiration to so many entrepreneurs across the country. Wish you all the best for the remainder of your life and what you've done.
Thank you, then great talking to you.
Thank you very much for your time today.